All right, we're gonna dive in because this is a really interesting article from PC Gamer. Dune Awakening shared this on their Twitter. I caught it. I think it was yesterday I saw it, but I didn't have time to get to it until this morning. But what I appreciate about this is that I also was not someone who I really don't focus much on survival games when that's like the primary element. I I always play like narrative cinematic games. Like I like good storytelling. I like good cinematics. I like cutscenes. I like voice acting. I like there to be a narrative structure to the games that I play for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule. And Shrouded is a really good exception. And Shrouded is a super cool RPG that has a crafting and survival element to it that's not too harsh. We have a co-op server. We play a couple times a week on Saturdays and Sundays. It's a lot of fun. Looking at Robin Hood Sherwood Builders, which is the most recent one that I played. That one has a solid RPG gameplay loop, and underneath that is this crafting your settlement and needing to craft buildings in the settlement to unlock the abilities for your main character with a slight hint of survival on the side. That's another good game. And Dune has always fascinated me as an IP because I swore years ago, and you can probably find it on my channel because I've said it multiple times over the years. I don't like PvP, but I would be willing to make an exception for a Dune game because in the Dune books, it makes sense that you have these families and factions warring against each other. And so, from the perspective of um, I love the books. I would love to play a video game based on Dune. When Dune Awakening was announced, I initially went PvP, and then I went, yeah, but I've always said that I'm gonna try it no matter what because it's Dune. And then along the way, I've seen these other games that have started to improve upon the crafting survival mechanic over the years. And I went and played Conan Exiles. And if you haven't watched the first impressions of that, that was last year, I think, is when I did Conan Exiles. And really enjoyed the time that I had in that world, even though I didn't give it much time because I was busy with other things. That was just a first impressions series. And I did a few sessions after that because I was marveling at like the housing that it is done in Conan Exiles. Like people have built some amazing things. If you're not aware of that, you should totally check it out because there is the crafting survival RPG that's there, but on top of that is the fact that you can build all these structures, and that has become a huge market for that game. And so when you watch what they're building with Dune Awakening, you realize that so it's building upon what they've learned from Conan Exiles with the way player housing works and people being able to do all this on top of this Dune IP and creating a backdrop that's there for you to weave your own story in, along with a sort of RPG MMO element. All of that sounded fascinating to me. So, one of the things I've been actively pursuing in the last about 12 months has been diving deeper and deeper into the crafting survival genre because it wasn't something that I previously paid a lot of attention to until within the last, like I said, 12 to 18 months. Um, with a few odd exceptions here and there. Outward being one of those, because that was several years ago. That was like at the beginning of that crafting survival craze that started. Anyways, let's go read this PC Gamer article because it's really good. And I've seen snippets of it, but I haven't done the full read through yet. So I wanted to hang out with y'all and kind of go through this morning. This is by Wes Fenlon, and it says, I don't usually play survival games or MMOs, but almost everything about Dune Awakening looks way cooler than I expected. I play a lot of MMOs, so. Funcom's long gestating survival game is pulling from Dune lore in all sorts of clever ways. I will also say, if you're not in their Discord, you need to be in their Discord. The devs are very, very. Everybody from the creative director, Joel's in there all the time. Like there's a lot of people in Discord, and there are a lot of things that are talked about in Discord and snippets that are shared from the devs and things of that nature. So if you really want to go whole hog on Dune Awakening, get over in the Discord. I'm in the Discord. I've been promoting that Discord forever, and I'm happy to see people join because it's going to be fun. It says here in the film Dune Part 2, by the way, there might be some spoilers in here, so just, keep that in mind. A key part of Paul Atreides' journey requires crossing an enormous sandstorm that bisects the planet Arrakis at its equator. To the north, there is desert. To the south, there is wasteland, so uninhabitable it makes the northern hemisphere seem cozy by comparison. The only way to safely cross the storm is on the back of a giant sandworm strong enough to brace its endlessly raging gusts of wind and dust. Haha! Dude, sandworms are one of the coolest things from the book, too. Just in terms of it's something that gives the Fremen an edge against the Harkonnens that no one anticipated. Now, Duke Leto Atreides suspected there was desert power. Like he suspected, but before he could really truly leverage that, you know, he met his fate, and his son had to go on, and yeah, it's you need to read the book if you haven't. Try to avoid too many spoilers there. Um, Sandworms are awesome, and I'm hoping that we get a proper. From what I've seen from the trailer so far, they have been a proper scary threat in Dune Awakening. It says here in Dune Awakening, the deep desert and storm surrounding will be extra. Hang on a second, let me rephrase that. In survival MMO Dune Awakening, the deep desert and the storm surrounding will be an extra deadly PvP zone with an enormous swath of land that will be wiped clean by Coriolis storms once a week. It was around this point in Funcom's presentation of Awakening that I began to think, damn, this sounds really cool. Now, I'm going to stop there because here's my reaction to that as well. As someone who is not a fan of forced PvP, one of the things I did like about New World was you could play the game entirely as a PvE survival RPG with some friends if you wanted to, or solo if you wanted to. Then the PvP was this optional stuff that was happening over here that you could go participate in at any point in time, but it wasn't mandatory in order to succeed or to at least play the game and obtain achievable results. Like obviously if you wanted like a guild hall and all these big things and the big rewards, you got to go do that stuff because that's where the core of the end game is. And from what I've seen in press releases so far and the Dune Awakening Direct they did, I believe that's what they're shooting for, but I don't have confirmation of that. So, hopefully we'll find out more information soon. But the way they described it is with this being the deadly Coriolis storms is the open desert, like that's the wastelands over there, and the storms happen there. They wipe it clean once a week, and that's the PvP territories. Whereas there's going to be new spice blows, and the competition is between. This is the way it was described at the Dune Awakening Direct, unless I'm misinterpreting something. Was that when that happens, it's a race to get all the resources that are now there, which weren't there the last week because it shifts. It's the shifting sands are constantly changing. So once a week, all these new resources appear, and so it's up to the guilds who have, you've got blueprints made from structures that you've already built before, and you take your blueprints and you put them out there, and everybody's contributing to the blueprint to build the structures as quickly as possible that you can set up a harvesting facility and get the spice out and everything else. And I believe there was some discussion of faction related content associated with that, with the Landsrad and some of the greater houses, but again, I don't know how all that's going to be working in its entirety. But to me, that sounds like a pretty awesome end game gameplay loop that's constantly. It is going to feel grindy after a while for some people, no doubt, but for those of us who don't mind that kind of content where it's a constant, it's the same but it's different each time, you know what I mean, like that becomes a cooperative thing that we do as guilds that makes gaming as a community so much fun because you find a core of people who really love to do that kind of stuff and you go do it and you have fun doing it. It's like it's the same as raiding in like World of Warcraft or EverQuest 2 or any of the other games. It's just it's fun to do things as a group and as a community. So that sounds incredibly fun. And even though I have traditionally not been a fan of PvP, I have a pretty good gaming community built up right now over the last 10 years between all the things I've done with my brother. And then more recently, what we've been doing with Risen and building this, gaming community that started in World of Warcraft, but has spread beyond that. Like we have a really good core of people. Like we're playing multiplayer in Shrouded right now. We're all planning on playing this together. It's very exciting to me to think about being in a place where I, could potentially play a PvP game and have play a PvP part of the game and to have fun doing so because I've got a really good group of people that are willing to go do the same thing. And so that sounds exciting to me. So even though I haven't traditionally been a PvP player, I might actually be diving into it in this game because that all sounds incredibly exciting. Then they talk about he's reading. I'm reading that a little bit more here. Says Funcom has been playing Dune Awakening close to the vest for years with nothing but a CGI trailer since its reveal. Yeah, which I think was like 3 years ago. I can't remember. But in the in-engine footage, it showed off, albeit without just any UI. Yeah, that's true. Nobody's shown any UIs yet. Said it grabbed my interest despite the fact that I don't usually play MMOs or survival games. Now this is where it's gonna be interesting to read because I haven't read beyond this point. Says the combat and quest design in most MMOs bores me to tears. I spent months trying to convince myself I liked Final Fantasy 14 before I dropped it. By the way, you're not the only one who doesn't like Final Fantasy 14. I made it halfway through Heaven's Ward before I gave up the ghost and was like, this is not for me. It's just not. Um, says I was obsessed with building constructs in Satisfactory, but outside that creative expression, I didn't want to bother with the generic resource gathering and hunger thirst systems of most survival games. So I want to touch on this because one of the things that has made me struggle with crafting survival games in the past is the ones that don't have an RPG reason to be doing the things I'm doing. I've really enjoyed Enshrouded as an example because even though hunger and thirst is there, it's more like you're getting buffs from those things. It's not going to kill you if you don't eat or drink, but you do get passive buffs. And so there's an incentive there to use the food and water, even if it doesn't kill you. Other games, it's far more strict and you can actually die. Your character could die if you don't eat or drink. But there are lots of ways to do it. The other thing I really like about like Enshrouded as an example is there's a RPG system on top of everything. So our first and foremost the way we're playing that game is as a RPG slash crafting game. So our community right now, it's funny. We were just playing on Saturdays, or it's just on Sundays, and then we moved to Saturdays and Sundays. We were having some issues with just hosting clients, so we just Lysander went and got a 24/7 server for us now, and so it's been people have been playing a lot more than just a couple times a week. It's pretty funny. It's an awesome game, and so I'm looking at that going, when there's a good RPG element surrounded by a good crafting element, the survival element honestly becomes this thing where you don't really worry about it and you don't stress about it because you're having so much fun with the other things. But the other things need to be there first for that survival element to be fun to me. If the game is like no fun and there's a survivor element and I'm like, well, like the zombie thing I was talking about earlier, like if I'm on an island infested with zombies, why are there zombies here? How did I get here? What am I doing? Like there needs to be a quest for me to like, it shouldn't just be survive on a desert island with zombies. Like that to me is boring as hell. But if you say the island is like the island from Lost and I somehow got transported here or I was put here and my job is to escape the island while it's traveling through time and I've got to fight my way through zombies and hordes and mutations because they are here because of the science experiment got wrong and I've got to figure out what went wrong with that science experiment and how to fix that science experiment. Like Grounded is a really good example of another crafting survival game that has a really cool RPG like Honey I Shrunk the Kids aspect to it. So when you can put a good RPG in place, the crafting and survival elements, I promise you, they will feel like they are a part of the overall experience. And I know that what I saw with Conan, and matter of fact, I don't want to say anything yet, but I don't have a ton of time this summer. But I could be convinced to go do some more Conan Exiles just to sort of get myself in the headspace of Dune Awakening. We'll see. I don't have any time right now, but that might be something for like June or July. We'll see where things are. Depends on how busy I am with other things. You never know. Anyway, really good stuff when it's done right. So yeah. Dune Awakening is going to have water is obviously going to be a precious resource. It says it also features some ideas I'm not sure in common with survival games yet, like the ability to save a blueprint of anything you build so you can recreate it in a snap, and the ability to sell those blueprints to other players in a system called the Chum Exchange. By the way, I've always pronounced it Chom. It might be Comb. I always figured it was Chom. So the Chum Exchange is, for those of you who aren't aware of Dune lore, that's essentially it's not like the stock market, but it is like the stock market for the overall organizations within the Chum group, and they're all houses. I don't remember exactly what that stands for, to be honest with you, but it was also in Dune Spice Wars. You had to deal with the exchange, and essentially that's where spice is sold and all this other stuff. So, being able to make blueprints of really cool housing structures, you then share a video of that on, YouTube or whatever, and then you go sell those blueprints to other players. Like it's just this really cool system where people are going to be doing some really creative things with housing structures in this game because they're already setting it up that way. It's really looking cool. It says Awakening aims to be the style of an MMO that lets you ignore the story and combat to make your own living as a builder and designer if you fancy it, which is really cool to think that you could just be a crafter and only make buildings and structures and sell your blueprints. That's going to be really cool. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. Also, the big thing is going to be, your guild, your community coming together and building a massive structure that has all the crafting facilities that you need, and then being able to quickly take that and transport it to the open desert when the Coriolis storms have passed, set up a production facility, and try to be the first to get the spice out, while fending off attacks from other, bandits and other players. That's going to be intense. It says here, if you know Dune, you recognize that CHOAM is the monopolistic marketing body that controls galactic trade. Every facet of Awakening seems to be plucking the pieces of survival and MMO genres that best suit Dune, then molding them around some aspect of the lore for the game. This is a good example of when a company, you're adapting. You're not trying to do take a blow by blow of the book, and you shouldn't be. Like, no one, whether it's a film adaptation or a radio adaptation, a theater adaptation, TV show, everything needs to be done. It's an adaptation. It should be different. It absolutely should be different. So, as an example here, it says the ruling body of the Landsraad gives objectives to the great houses, which rather than directly to the player here, it says, and then you have to talk to the representatives of the houses to figure out what they've been tasked with, and those objectives may require the factions to work together to win Landsraad support. It also may be against other factions. Player-run guilds within the factions, meanwhile, may have their own ideas of how to win the most Landsraad support for their own side. So this is another aspect of PvP that sounds a lot like what New World is doing, with all the various factions that you can join. I think there was 3 at the beginning. I haven't played since the game launched. I think there were 3 factions at the beginning of New World, and you picked one, and you would do quests for them, and you were earning faction and gear within that group, and then those groups would have different tasks. So that sounds kind of very similar to that. Very cool in my mind. It was all optional in New World, and there were lots of ways to contribute. Like, you could go harvest things, you could craft things, you could do kill quests, you could do delivery quests. There was lots of different ways to contribute. It wasn't just go out and do this one thing over and over and over and over and over again. Dun, 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 dun. It says here, in the Deep Desert I mentioned earlier, a very Dune take on the PvP zones common MMOs, as explained by creative director Joel Bylas, says, this is where the Coriolis storms hit the hardest and destroy everything. And I mean everything. I gotta slow down here. We put very valuable things in the deep desert. So what I'm hoping is players use the blueprint system to take a copy of their buildings, take them out with them, set up logistic bases in the deep desert with the knowledge they'll be wiped every week, and then keep their home decorated and nice back in the safe desert, but they're continually coming out to compete with other people over the spice in the deep desert and to compete for harvesting operations. Bylas also served as the lead on Conan Exiles, and he seems to intimately understand what makes survival games compelling, as this writer says. Also heavily inspired by Star Wars Galaxies, which that is a really cool reference point for those of us who have been around long enough to understand the significance of what that statement means. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but it shows me that Joel is someone who appreciates the breadth and depth of what the Dune IP is and what could be accomplished, if someone really wanted to create an awesome Dune MMO. Because Star Wars Galaxies was an absolutely fucking epic MMO for its time. And it is unfortunate what happened to it in the long term, but it still stands out as like one of these shining beacons of like early creativity when it was the wild west and there was no holds barred on anything, and they got to do whatever they wanted, and some really cool creative stuff came out of that. It says another innately Dune twist on the basics of the survival game is what Awakening is doing with the spice, which is not just a resource you gather for money, but is also the thing that binds it all together. But it's in Dune Spice Wars, it's currency, it's everything. Apparently, Joel said, I don't want to spoil too much, but as the player is exposed to spice on the planet, they start to experience things. It's part of what drives them through the game. To tell a really good Dune story and make a good Dune game, you have to put spice at the center of it. It drives the economy. It's what players are fighting for. It's what players are competing for. You can get addicted to it if you take enough. You change the way your abilities work, which sounds really, really cool. Although you can't, you'll be addicted at that point. Like spice is a very strong central line. The more spice you take, the more spice you need. It's really something we want you to think about as a player. So really cool stuff there. I like the idea of, especially coming from the book perspective, all the Fremen are spiritual on that level because they are all addicted to the spice. And the scary thing about Dune, if you read beyond Dune Messiah and you get into the God Emperor of Dune and beyond, and the really crazy parts of the series, um, you take enough spice, you go deep enough down that rabbit hole, you become a sandworm hybrid. So it says here, the more I talked to Bylos, this is the writer, by the way, the more tantalizing bits of detail I found myself getting excited about, in spite of my usual genre aversion. A failed Kwisatz Haderach is one of the game's villains. You'll be able to craft your base without manually taking items out of chests, which is a streamlining change since Conan Exiles. That's awesome. Shared, however they do that, having like a giant. One of the things we like in Enshrouded is the magical boxes. We've crafted a bunch of magic boxes, and all of our team we throw things in the magical boxes because then they get drawn out automatically to the crafting stations. So it sounds like they're going to have some sort of system similar here. Desert botanical testing stations around the world act as dungeons, but also a visual break from the brown environments. They feature vaults that have unique set pieces, such as a blight when people are high on mushroom spores, mutant experiments, and factions battling over water. The game touches on the Butlerian Jihad, which is a part of Dune's lore related to man's use of AI, something the movies haven't touched on, but it is in the books. It says Funcom has spent years working on server meshing tech to let large-scale action with hundreds of players play it across servers completely seamlessly. Hang on, I need to reread that. They've worked on server meshing tech to let large-scale action with hundreds of players play it across servers completely seamlessly. That sounds interesting. We still don't know anything about private servers, like if you could do the same thing as you could do in Conan Exiles, or if it's designed to only be played online because they want to have that PvP element of the Coriolis Storms always be present. I don't think they've made that announcement yet, or if they're going to have both. Don't know yet. I think, yeah. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Also, we don't know anything about crossplay yet. Like, is it going to be crossplay between the ecosystems so Xbox can play with PlayStation, can play with PC? That would be awesome. Please say that that's so. That would be great. The first design principle by for the team is make your designs fit Dune. Do not make Dune fit your designs. That's a good principle. There are vehicles, the ability to mod vehicles with scanners, weapon mods, aesthetic customization, etc. And the CHOAM issues permits that control crafting, introducing a degree of scarcity that could make the exchange more interesting, which is Star Wars Galaxy's crafting at its core, man. It looks pretty good too visually so far. We have to wait and see how it's all going to pan out long term, but I've been incredibly pleased with everything I've seen so far. And while I didn't traditionally consider crafting survival to be like something that I was ever going to be deep into, this game has already got me by the horns. I was going to say something else, but hey, we'll try to keep this PG-13. It's had my attention for a long time because it is Dune and I love Dune, and there are a lot of elements here that look really cool, and it sounds like they're drawing on lots of different inspiration sources. Many different inspiration sources would be a better way to say that. I'm excited. I think good things are coming from this game. We still don't have a release date. All we know is they're doing lots more closed beta tests right now. You can find more information at their website, over in their Discord. Hopefully I'll see you over there as well. And until next time, everybody, don't forget, daily streams here and on Twitch. You can always like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to never miss an update here. I play a lot of games. Check out the playlist. There's lots of news, movie reviews, and more. There's a Discord. There's a Patreon. I sell books. All that stuff's down below. See you next time, everybody. Stay safe. Happy gaming.